So welcome to Talk of Christ, Faith, Family, and Adventure. I'm Steve Hunt, and I'm joined today by Marti, who is going to be our guest, and I'm going to ask her some questions about her individual faith journey. Give me just 1 second to set some. There we go. All right, Marti, welcome. It's good to have you here. Why don't you tell us whatever you're willing to tell us about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and get us started on an understanding of you and your faith journey.
All right. So I grew up in northern Utah, grew up on a dairy farm, and had 5 older brothers. Just grew up in the church. We always went to church every week. From what I understand, my dad wasn't active until the brother up above me turned about 5 years old, and then he started going to church. I always remember him always going to church, but I guess.
And when you do say you're in the church and active in the church, we're talking about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
All right. Okay. Keep going.
So yeah, pretty. I believed it. I'm trying to think of anything you want to know. Like there's no converts in my family. We're all active. I guess I have
when you say you believed it, would you say that, how important to you were the, truth claims specifically about, all kinds of, like, what were you aware of in terms of things like the Book of Abraham and truth claims about the papyri, or, just had you ever heard any, concerns about DNA claims with the Book of Mormon? What did you know about polygamy and Joseph Smith? Kind of those things when you were growing up. When you say you believed it, what exactly were you believing, and what were you aware of at the time?
So I believe the chapel church, like your correlated belief. I don't remember. I remember polygamy. I remember in like Young Women one time, there was a teacher that kind of got into polygamy a little bit and said, this is really hard for me. I remember thinking back on it, thinking it's not a big deal because it's like we don't practice it now. So I was like, why is she so? And now it makes sense. It totally makes sense what she was trying to say, because I hear a lot of people talking about it, but just was a non-issue, I guess. So I don't remember Joseph Smith polygamy being talked about. I thought up until, I would say, until college, I thought that polygamy was just something Brigham Young started. I didn't realize Joseph Smith practiced polygamy. So I'm trying to think of the first time I became aware of some of the harder things. I remember in high school, so my brother, he came home from his mission, the one right above me. He came home from his mission and shortly after stopped wearing his garments, and it wasn't something we ever really talked about. So I just made assumptions. I never asked him. I was always curious, never asked him. So
you could just tell from what he was wearing or something?
Right.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So so I thought that was weird. And then rumors were going around in the family, and I kind of found out, well, he's agnostic. So, and I didn't really I had some conversations with him as I got older and got into college and stuff like that, but I didn't have like a real conversation with him until my own faith crisis, like a couple of years ago. So, yeah, so that was.
Now, you said that when you were really little, you hear or you understand your dad wasn't completely active, but you remember him always being an active member of the church, and
Sure.
Your mom as well. Are they now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And your brother right now is still agnostic out of the church?
Actually agnostic and slightly in the church. He actually ended up marrying a faithful person, and they're raising their kids in the church. And he has actually been a really interesting person to talk to going through this. He's actually I feel like he's kept me grounded and helped me not be so anti-religion. Okay. So he's actually
and then your other siblings, generally speaking, where are they?
They're all active. I have, so when I first was going through, I'd say all growing up, I remember having thoughts of converts are amazing. Like, I was like, I'm pretty sure if I wouldn't have accepted this story, like, I was like, there's no way I believe this. So I always thought,
In regard to which story?
The origination story, the plates and the visions and stuff like that. Like, I just remember thinking, it's a good thing I was born in the church, because there's no way I would have believed that. I remember thinking that all growing up, and just thinking how amazing converts were. And so, yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit jumbled, but yeah, so I think that I first started having problems or just kind of doubts. It was around 2016. I was following politics a little bit. So I grew up in a almost religiously conservative home as well. So my dad loves President Benson. He loves Skousen. He's just super, he's as conservative as he is Mormon. And anyway, I was just watching politics and stuff unfold in 2016, and just how echo chamber, like, if you go over here, they were thinking this and they were coming over here. And I was really trying to find people talking to each other. And so I came across Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson talking to each other, and I thought that was really cool. And I just remember it was around that time, and I was just kind of thinking, I was watching people just reinforce what they already believed. And I was like, and I don't remember actually like turning that at my own faith, but I do remember I was on a run, and I was just thinking, and I was like, do I believe that Joseph Smith really had gold plates? Like, that was my first time I remember just wondering if I really believe the church. And then from there, for about 3 years, I didn't talk to anybody about it. So these are just like thoughts, and I'm not even sure if they were that articulated when I had those thoughts, like, if you don't say it out loud, it's really hard to know what your thoughts are. I don't know if you know what I mean there, but, so yeah, I was in the primary presidency at the time, and I loved working with the kids. And I remember, I was leading one of the songs, and it was about Christ and how he loves the children and stuff. And I just remember feeling a lot of love for the kids. And I didn't really think too much about my doubts. I would say that I just kind of pushed them to the side, and I didn't think about them too much. But I was concerned that I was losing my testimony, and it bothered me, because I would try to do things to strengthen my testimony, and it didn't seem to work. Sorry, I didn't think I'd get emotional.
What kinds of things?
Oh, okay. So I am a terrible reader. I reader in general. Like, I think I can count on maybe 20 books that I have like read all the way through. I'd start a lot of books, but I'd not read. So just even reading the scriptures was hard for me. In the last 2 years, I've listened to audiobooks. I've found audiobooks, and it's been amazing. I've listened to probably like 20 audiobooks in the last 2 years, and it's amazing. But reading is just hard for me to sit down and read it and actually consume it without, like, I'll be daydreaming while I'm reading. So it's just really hard for me to read. So scripture study, I kind of felt like I might be losing my testimony because I wasn't studying my scriptures enough, I guess. So, but yeah, so I would fast, and I'd pray, and I'd try to like just gain that level of confidence back, because it wasn't that, I don't know, it's really hard to describe. It's like, I'd say young adult, I was just sure the church was true. I never doubted. Like, I was just like, yeah, of course it's true. And the older I was getting, the less I was realizing I know. And so I was just less confident, I guess. And I think I could have probably lived in the church like that. It was hard because there's an expectation to know at church. It's there. I understand a lot of people argue that's a cultural thing and stuff, but it's there. And even when I've described this to people and family members and stuff, and they say, well, you don't have to know. But even Lord, I believe. I listened to that talk by Elder Holland a lot. Like I just had that on repeat. And I loved it because at the end, he's just like, if you don't have your own testimony, you can rely on mine. And I lived on that for a long time. And I think kind of what happened is I don't know, I guess I just kind of realized that, I don't know, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. So I listened to Lord, I Believe a lot. And even at the end of that talk, though, that's what I was getting at. Even at the end of that talk, there's kind of this expectation that you will know someday. So I guess everywhere I looked, there was just like this reinforcing that I would gain my testimony back, or that I would have a better, more sure knowledge. So that was hard.
When do you feel that you said that growing up, you felt, yeah, it's true, I know it's true, or whatever, you said that. Why did you feel that way? Or when were you feeling the most strong and confident? And then compared to what things made you feel, least confident?
I say the strongest, where I felt like things were just fitting into place, it was probably my first year in college. I had some pretty awesome institute teachers. I was reading my scriptures every morning. It was like for a full semester, maybe even for the full school year, I think. And that's the first time I'd ever been that consistent. And I felt like I always had time for my homework, and everything just fell into place. And I just remember thinking that really, I went back to that experience and just said, yeah, the church is true. I know that when I'm living the gospel, things work well in my life, and things work well. Giving talks and stuff, I talk about that experience a lot. And then I'd say, as they were falling apart, I don't know, it was just so gradual. It's really hard to put my finger on it. It was just knowing something here and something there. I remember in 2010, Wikipedia was just ramping up, like to be a decent source to like, oh, I wonder about this. And so you go learn about things. And I was like, I wonder what the world says about the church, because obviously it's true. And so I went to Wikipedia, really wondering how secular people understand Mormons. And I just wanted to know what they thought about us. And so I went on there, and I felt like it was fairly unbiased. I wasn't going to come across any like raging anti-Mormon stuff. And that's when I first learned about Fanny Alger, and I was like, that's interesting. And then I remember I spent a couple of days on Wikipedia at that point, and I remember thinking, and I talked to my husband too, because we were newlyweds. Maybe we'd been married for about 3 years actually by then. So anyway, I remember talking to him, and I remember walking away from that experience just kind of feeling like there's so much information in the world. There's not enough time to figure it all out. And so in the end, I do trust the method of, relying on the Holy Ghost. And so I just kind of said, I don't think that stuff is that important. It doesn't really change the way I live my life as an LDS person or as a faithful person. So I just kind of I didn't really look at it anymore. And so, but I didn't really know. It was whatever you could read in a couple of days, but it wasn't full time either. So it wasn't like I went into the rabbit hole. I sensed that there was a rabbit hole there, and I just decided not to go down it. Yeah.
So
anyway,
since then, what's been the biggest source of frustration and the largest detrimental thing to what you would consider your testimony and your faith?
I just didn't feel like I could say I know. Like and I understand the whole thing, like when people say I know, they're saying no with the confidence level of they know they love their wife, or they know, and I honestly didn't feel like I could say that. I believe is something I could say, but as time went on, I didn't even feel like I could say believe. It turned into more like I had a desire to believe, but I didn't really even believe it. I'd say that on that run, that was the first time I really acknowledged to myself that I don't believe in miracles like that. Like, and it's hard. It's like, I don't know, this could be the engineer in me. I really just, you don't see that happening around. And so I still believed in the church at that time, and I was kind of trying to turn it into a more of a materialistically true thing. Like, how could it still be true? Okay, well, I think God works through our intuitions and works through our, does that make sense? Like, God's still able to work. There are things we don't understand still, and I think God works through those things. But I didn't see miracles in real life, and it's not that they couldn't happen at that time. It's not, I still hoped that they happened in special moments, I guess. I still hoped they were true, but I was wondering why, if I had a epistemology type stuff, I was wondering if I had a good reason to believe that. And yeah, I guess, like, I didn't even know what the word epistemology meant until this last year, but that I basically was going through that myself. I was doing outsider test of faiths kind of things, and I was just less confident that I had a good reason to believe what I believed when I don't believe. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
So
that's how it started.
Did you have a? I mean, in all of your experience with the gospel and praying about the Book of Mormon and the things that everybody ever tells you to do,
yeah,
did you have? You already mentioned you hadn't seen miracles. You don't necessarily believe in miracles. Had you felt a spiritual confirmations and witnesses? What's your response to people who say, well, have you?
I think those are really cool experiences. As I was telling people this when I first was because the way I'm describing it to you is kind of how I told my family too. I was just like, I just realized I don't really believe Joseph Smith. That's how it came about. Like, I just don't believe that an angel told him where physical gold plates were. That's the story I was having a hard time with. I mean, just not the only story, but just the way that.
So is that, you feel like that's still you've come back to that. Is that still kind of the biggest hang up for you personally, is the idea of angels, gold plates, Joseph Smith, that just story right there?
Yes, but during that 3 years, I kind of worked through that. Like, I kind of decided that I don't really have to know exactly how for example, I relied on this a lot. I kind of was like, well, Joseph Smith, he had this magical worldview, and I understand that I don't believe like that, but who else for God to be able to use as a tool and instrument is someone that did believe like that? Like, what better way for him to establish the gospel? And I just kind of felt like the church was a work and a wonder, and it was evolving, and it was getting better, and it was improving. And so I wasn't super caught up with, that mess. Like, I still wanted it to be true. I still had the desire for it to be true. I just couldn't honestly say it. That's how I'd say that 3 years was. Like,
so when did that desire and want for it to be true disappear, and what caused it to go away?
Okay, so we'll fast. So,
or I guess I should ask first, has it? I don't even know that, where are you at?
No,
where are you at right now?
No, so I've resigned from the church. So yeah, I would say, okay, so this whole time, I had never spoke to anybody about this stuff. Like, I was having this hard time with church, and you get some talks that help you through this stuff, because there are talks about this. And so I was kind of self-helping myself through this. I didn't really say that I was actually, never admitted to anyone that I was struggling with this. I was a little bit fearful that I'd get released from my callings and stuff. So I never really admitted to anybody, even my husband. And he came home from an early morning priesthood meeting and came home, and he was all ramped up. He's like, hey, I think we should do this and this and this, and we could do this a little bit better. And, just like kind of daily family scripture study and different things. Like, we really need to teach the gospel, and not in an authoritarian way. We need to teach it so they want to live it. And anyway, he was all ramped up, and I don't even know how it came. I was getting a little bit down because I felt like I was in a rut and I was never going to get out. And I was starting to doubt the ability for me to change. So I think that's how it came up. I was like, I don't know that I can do any better. Like, I think this is the rut I'm in, and I think I might just be stuck here. And eventually the conversation, I can't remember that conversation very well, but I think I said something along the lines of like, I can't say I know the church is true anymore. I don't know. And I don't know if I can know, because I was worried that even if I did get a spiritual experience, I would be worried that I wanted it to be true so bad. I would be worried that it was just myself making it true. And so I was really worried about that being a good method for knowing things by that point. And so keep in mind, I've never had like a big spiritual experience. Like I remember trying to decide what college to go to. And I really relied on advice that was like, if you don't get an answer, you take one step forward, and that feels like a good, if you feels good, then you keep moving forward. You can't just sit and do nothing. You have to like move forward in faith. And so I kind of used that in my life a lot with lots of big decisions. I never really got super strong answers. So that's how prayer worked for me, is I just kind of moved forward in faith and just hoped that God was guiding my thoughts, I guess. But even talking to my husband about this, I was just like, even if I did get a big spiritual experience, I would wonder where it was coming from, if it was coming from my own mind or from God. And so that really bothered him. He felt like that was me saying I wasn't willing to try. And it's not that I wasn't willing to try. It was just, that's where I was at. But that really hurt him. And that's why I didn't want to tell him, because I knew it would. And he had a really rough 24 hours. Meanwhile, I had an amazing 24 hours, like a huge burden had been lifted. I felt like I could actually be authentic, and I was really happy. And he came home from work the next day and was just distraught. And he's like, and now I know what he was thinking. He didn't tell me this, but in his head, he's going, doesn't our eternal marriage mean anything? But he ended up coming home and letting me know that it was really bothering him. And I just was like, no, I still have the desire to believe. I'm willing to do these things. And so from there, we just kind of decided we were going to be a little bit better at studying our scriptures. And me personally, I was going to do all those things and see if I could gain my testimony, and with his help and him knowing that maybe it would help. It wasn't like 2 weeks after that we got asked to talk in church. And his topic was, how do we know, by reason or revelation? So that was, I told my mom that, and she's like, see, that was an answer to your prayers. But
that was assigned to him, or that's what he came up with?
No, it was assigned to him. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Was that your topic too, or what was yours?
No, this was right before general conference. Mine was why listen to general conference. So that was
interesting. Huh.
And
okay.
At this point, I was really careful with my language. So like if I was teaching a lesson, I would always stay within the lesson manual. And when it would tell you to bear your testimony at the end, I would bear whatever testimony I could. But I wouldn't use language like, we believe this. I would use language like, the church teaches this. Like I was really careful with my language. I was really struggling, especially with my kids. I'd listen to my husband teaching them something that I wasn't sure about, and with a high level of confidence. And it really started to eat at me, because I was like, I don't know that we should be teaching them with that level of confidence. I can't do that. There's some of me that was like, oh, I'm glad he can do that, because I couldn't. Someone needs to.
Did you feel like you were in the vast majority or all by yourself in this? I mean, it sounds like you didn't want to share your thoughts or your struggles with anyone. You were afraid of getting released from your calling. You didn't want to share with your husband. You thought it would disappoint him. You didn't want to share with your family. So for years, this was an internal struggle.
Not constantly, though. I would say it went in waves. So there are some moments where I would have good experiences at church and feel like things were on the right path, and it wasn't bothering me.
But that was only when that was when you were feeling good in the faith. There wasn't this moment of, I'm feeling very doubtful and I'm questioning it and I feel good. That never happened. It was always, it only went in waves where you felt good because you're like, okay, I think I can kind of believe enough to get by. Is that, I guess really
it's almost like go ahead. Well, I would think I would describe it more like I knew what the right answers were. Like I've been brought up in the church, and I even knew some of the apologetic answers for my own problems. And so, heck, we even had a friend. We went and stayed. This is before I told my husband, and he was talking to my husband when they went alone together, and he was just bringing up some of the polyandry that he had just learned about for the first time. And I remember Kevin talking to me about that, and he said, yeah, he's struggling with this. And I remember being so mad at our friend because I was just like, he can't struggle with this. Like, so this is in the middle of me doubting, and I'm not even giving someone else the right to have these doubts. Like it was almost like I'm struggling through this, and how can you have a problem with this? That's not even a big deal. Like I was upset that he was struggling with his faith.
And that's what I want to know about is it sounds to me like in your struggles with your faith, in your doubts, you were concerned that anyone would find out. And
yeah, that would have been a great segue to like say, hey, I'm having problems too, Kevin. And I never took that chance.
Well, was that because you felt that they would do what you're doing now to Kevin, where they would say, you can't doubt, you can't, and they would really tell you that's not okay? Did you feel like you were the only one around you doubting? I'm just wondering how you felt at that time, and that you just weren't allowed to have that feeling?
Interesting. No, I even understood that it was okay. I'm trying to remember. I remember fasting one time, and I felt like the answer to my fast was someone bore their testimony, and it was someone's wife of a stake presidency member, and she got up and she basically described how she doesn't know and how her husband does, and how that was just his spiritual gift, and she's just accepted that that's not her spiritual gift, and she's okay with that. And that, to me, that was the answer to my prayer.
That was the stake president's wife.
Not stake's presidency member.
But in the stake presidency.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And they're neighbors. Their kids are awesome. They're very, very faithful. And that to me, I think what I was wanting to hear from the church and from that I was okay where I was at, and that I could sense that it wasn't going to change. Like I could sense that it wasn't going to go backwards, that it was just going to go further and further down this. The more I know, the more I am less confident with what I know. It seemed to be the pattern in the last, 15 years. And so I think that's what I was wanting to hear, because that made me feel really good. I remember I came home from that Sunday and I was really happy. Trying to think of other times. The other times that I felt relief was obviously telling my husband. That was huge. So I don't recommend anybody, if you're doubting, to keep it to yourself, because it's very healing to have someone help you carry that.
And as other people have come to know about it in your family, in your community, how have they generally reacted? Has it been vitriolic and
no.
Has it been trying to force you to believe, or has it been really understanding? Have you had all three?
Let's see. Different for different people. So we told people pretty early on. So we go back to after we gave those talks. I used a quote that I think a lot of people don't like. And I'm trying to remember. Do you remember that that quote? It would have been back in the 2000s probably, and it was one of the Young Women's presidency. She said, "We have enough women who are rash. We need more women that are tender. We have enough women who are." I can't remember. It was basically. It sounded a little
something like that from a Relief Society president.
Oh, I thought it was Young Women president, but yeah. Anyway, I gave that quote in my talk because I heard the backstory to that, and she actually took out that. I heard this at Snow College when I was going down there. She took out she, when they time their talks for general conference, and she was 5 minutes over, so she took 5 minutes out of her talk. And then when she went and redid it, she was 5 minutes short. So and instead of putting back what she had already taken out, she rewrote some, and that was part of her rewritten talk. So when I was giving my talk on why we should listen to General Conference, I was making the case that it's inspired, because that was inspired, and so we should listen to General Conference because it's inspired.
You are correct, though. It was a young woman presidency member. It was Sister, hang on, Nadald in 2000, young woman general president. Yeah, so I'm sorry. So what about that quote then was the...
Well, I'm speculating that because I used that quote, I shortly after got called to be in the release, or in the Young Women's.
Okay.
So yeah, I got called into the Young Women's. It was funny because I was actually doing okay. I kind of was having a new spiritual high, if you will, or I don't even know if it's spiritual high. Just I had a lot of weight lifted off of me, and I was excited to be able to just be honest with where I was at instead of like not acknowledging it. Like, it's so hard because I didn't feel like I was faking anything, because I didn't necessarily think it was for sure a problem. Like I said, I'd never even said it out loud to anybody. Oh yeah, I gotta go in. Sorry. Give me like 5 more minutes. So yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off here with a little message to you to just see how you're doing on time. But I want to make sure that if you need to go.
Well, I'm probably not good for your channel. I'm not exactly professional, so.
No, this is fantastic. And I'm so enthralled in your story, and I want to keep going and hearing more. I've got many more questions.
We can get in touch another time. It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say that. Where was I? So yeah, I was feeling really good and healthy. Like, I was feeling really good just being able to be honest with my husband about it. And then I remember saying to him, I was like, you know what? I'm in the activity days. I'm sure I'm fine. I'm not going to say anything that's against the church or anything. And just as long as I don't get called into some kind of presidency calling. It wasn't like 2 weeks after that I got called into the Young Women's. And so I just upfront, and I told the bishop flat out where I was at, and he, to my surprise, was okay with it and said, I still want you to serve. And because I basically said something like, I'm willing, but you need to know this. Like, I can't even say I know the church is true, and I don't know how I can know. Like, I basically told him my epistemology problem, and he just, I remember he said something, which is something I already knew, I'd already heard, but he basically said, I don't know. I know this is bothering you, and I think I understand that you want an answer for this. And I don't know when, but I know the Lord will answer you. It might not be soon. It might not be even the next couple of years or even in this lifetime, but I know that God will answer your prayers. And I remember thinking, yeah, I know that's the answer. Thanks though. And I didn't even get into specifics with him. I just basically told him, I didn't even get into specifics because, like I said, I already knew. I feel like I'd already heard all of the reasons why I should believe. And so I'd already been arguing with myself for quite a while, I guess. So there wasn't anything too new that people told me. I am fascinated with people that do stay, though, with a nuanced belief, because that's not something that I'm super familiar with. But, anyway.
Well, I don't want to keep you longer than you can say, but yeah, let's continue soon, because I have many more questions and want to hear more about, exactly how you continue this process and out of the church and kind of where you're at now, and with faith in God, with faith in general. I guess that's kind of the same thing. And then, so thank you for joining me, and we'll talk again soon.